Joining today's podcast is the great Micah Posey, the Florida State pitching coach. Welcome, Micah. I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Thanks, Wayne. I appreciate it. Looking forward to chopping it up with you a little bit.
Cool. You had great success as a D1 coach for 11 years, and congratulations on earning Assistant Coach of the Year in Conference USA this year.
I appreciate it.
You had amazing success at DBU this year, breaking their all-time school strikeout record with 656 strikeouts and setting a school record for strikeouts per nine and going to the regionals yet again. And now as Florida State pitching coach, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Definitely a little bit of a new journey, being back in Florida now. This is kind of where I was born and raised, but yeah, excited about the journey ahead for sure.
Everyone talks about max velocity all the time. And on this show, we try to focus on the other things that are needed to succeed as a pitcher, such as a control, command, sequencing, mental training, and character. I know that at DBU, one of the important things for them has always been character. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they always do so well, because they recruit players with character and they emphasize that,
Yeah, Dan Hefner, great ball coach. Does a
Awesome.
really good job. I think it's about humility, and it's one thing that he's going to teach the guys is being about others and about the program and not about themselves. And obviously there's some faith-based things tied in that help with that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to be a good team, you're gonna have to be about other guys. If you got a bunch of guys that are just about themselves, it doesn't make for a very fun year, and ultimately you're not going to go very far either.
Yeah, I think there's a couple really good lessons that I know my son learned from Dan. First is a faith lesson as well, which was if you're faithful in the little things, you'll be faithful in the big things. So uh, that does translate to the field. Like, for example, when my son is out on the field, even in the minor leagues, double A, triple A, when he's standing at attention, I noticed he's at perfect attention, exactly as Dan had taught him. That's a lesson he taught him, to be really careful on the little things.
Yeah, I mean, everything matters. Everything you do matters, and better men oftentimes become better ball players. But better ball players don't always guarantee you're going to be a better man. So, I think Dan Hefner has learned that, and he's taught at a very high level, and I think that's why a lot of those guys have success at the pro level, and the scouts are wanting to draft those guys, and et cetera. So,
Yeah. I think the other big one too was he was taught to cheer for your teammates, be behind them 100%. And oddly enough, that helps you, because then they cheer for you when you're doing well. They try to help you. And it's that selfless servant leader
yeah.
kind of attitude that I think that's an important part.
Yeah, when you got a dugout and everybody's pulling in the same direction, it's a pretty cool thing. So a lot of special
Yeah.
things can happen when that happens. So
Yeah. So, what part has control and command played in the development of your pitches?
I mean, pretty big, honestly. I think you got to be able to do it all. I mean, I don't think you can rely on just velocity. I don't think you can rely on just command. I don't think you can rely on just like, I think there's kind of a little bit of an equation.
Yeah.
But certainly we're in the velocity craze stage, and everybody's kind of chasing that, but it doesn't really matter if your head's offline and you're not able to, make pitches. I mean, I think it happens. It's starting to become more of a thing that you wouldn't have noticed this, 5-10 years ago, but in the last 5 years, I've noticed, you get deep in a ball game, at the Division I level, and no longer is your mop up guy the guy with not good enough stuff who's getting hit. It's the guy that's throwing 95 plus that,
Yeah.
you know, getting anybody out. And every staff has them, unfortunately. So, velocity is a big piece, but I mean, if you can't command it and you don't know where it's going, I mean, there's not really a place for you as the game starts to thin out, as you get higher and higher, and start going up levels.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I think command also has a place in uh, securing the plate. You know, if you can't let a batter take over part of the plate, and you have to command inside to get them off the plate. Uh, for put away pitches, I've seen guys at schools I won't mention that had great stuff. They were doing really well, but they can never get guys out because they get two strikes, could put them away. You know,
Yeah. I
so
mean, and that's one thing that nobody really talks about. It's kind of interesting that you mentioned that, like, because a lot of times we equate strikeouts to stuff, which I mean, yeah, there's something with that. But I think a lot of times with two strikes, you're getting punch outs because you've executed a pitch too. You know,
yeah,
that stuff, if that really good stuff is up over the plate with two strikes, like, you know, it's you're probably not getting a ton of punch outs. Yeah, you can beat
yeah,
guys in the zone, but you're throwing it to the right part of the zone where you know you're gonna get swing and miss. It's you show a guy a heat map of where swing and miss is at, and it's like, all right, this is where you get swing and miss. If he can't get balls to that zone with two strikes, he's probably not gonna be very successful. I don't care how good his stuff is. So
yeah, and changing speeds. For example, if you throw 95 down the middle or even in the zone all day, you're still going to get hit. You're going to a lot of fouls. It's going to be a long day. You're not going to go deep in the game because you use a lot of pitches. Uh, but if you change speeds with 95 and then 80, you're going to have a lot of success, you know.
yeah, it was interesting. I think a few years ago there's some small talks about me, maybe potentially moving the mound back a little bit and this and that because the pitchers were dominating the game and it was a pitcher's game and people were just trying to figure it out. Like, what do we got to do? And here we are this year. I mean, the hitting in the last 2 to 3 years has really gotten good. And we're not having this conversation where the hitters have caught up and I think the machine and the hitting off the machines has neutralized velocity a little bit to an extent. So
Yeah,
yeah, there's
the players are used to hitting 95 down the middle all day.
these guys are having a hard time simulating changeups. Like I've been often told, like changes and cutters are the hardest thing for hitters to hit a good quality changeup or quality cutter. And so spin, they can see spin, velo, they feel like they can simulate that. And so yeah, I mean, here we are. Changing speeds is 100% important.
Yeah, and batters are picking lanes, to kind of
Yeah.
eliminate pitches, and sometimes you need to command if you're going to tunnel to get a guy off being able to work on a lane. You've got to tunnel your pitches. So if you've got to say a slider and a cutter, and if you tunnel them right, he can't pick a lane.
Right.
Same thing with a sinker and a cutter.
Yeah.
He can't pick a lane. He doesn't know it's going left or right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't do that without command. Uh, how have you used the command tracker target? I know you used it this year. How did you find it?
Yeah. So I think it was through you, we were kind of trying to figure out some ways. We were doing execution bullpens and just trying to find a ways to quantify execution out. So at Dallas Baptist, we had the command tracker last year, and we kept it kind of in our lab where guys could hop on it. We would throw pins on it. Also, guys would hop on it on their off days and do short boxes, and it was very humbling for some guys. Like that thing. You're
Yeah,
staring there, look at that thing, feeling like, okay, I'm going to go 60% execution today, and you look up and you've located, maybe 2 out of 10, and it's like, okay, I got some work to do. But our
I
guys
found
like,
that I did find that with a lot of pitchers that when they first use it, they realize how far off they are. And then I noticed another thing. I had a group of 20 pitchers one weekend, two sets, high school guys throwing to the target. I set it in multi mode. They got one pitch each, went to the next guy.
Mhm.
They're barely hitting the target. But then I gave them two pitches. All of a sudden, the second pitch, they're hitting the target. And what I found to me was there was a mental kind of bump they had to overcome.
Yeah,
Did you find that as well?
yeah. I mean, we would go simulate, like we would go straight through it. One thing that we found is like instead of locking in like a smaller spot, which is a lot of times what you would do, we would try to make it, a little bit bigger. We instead of throwing to like a smaller area, we would say, hey, like throw to this
Big
area.
four squares, yeah.
Yeah, we felt like the misses were a lot more competitive, and guys were able to kind of do a lot better job. But when it was just the one square, that definitely
Well,
it
that's the
was
highest
hard.
level. And in the target, you
Yeah,
can select an area or a single spot,
yeah,
or work on control, uh, or work on good misses. That's another concept I like to promote too, is that if you're going to execute your idea, if I want you to throw low and away, if you miss, I want it to be low and away, you know?
yeah. And that was the thing. Yeah, the good misses, like now you're educating and you're having that conversation with guys like, hey, that's a good miss, spot, but that's a good miss. You're not gonna get hurt there. And we'd simulate some counts with it. So, hey,
Mhm.
like in this count, we can be to this area. So this count, we want to be, maybe this area. And so now you're starting to be able to talk about, execution and counts and what that looks like. And but yeah, I thought the guys loved it because like this generation, they like the games. They play games on their phones or, this and that. They like the video games. They have the consoles that they play on, the PlayStations and those things. So now you have a thing that it makes a noise like a video game, a cha-ching when you hit a spot. And
Yeah.
now I'm getting a score. So it's kind of like, it's
Yeah.
like Candy Crush. I'm trying to pass levels and I'm, trying to better my scores. I'm playing against this guy. And it kind of spices up the pins and makes, takes a little bit of the monotony out of it. So we
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah. There's a new sound coming, soon, that if you miss the spot, it goes da da da.
I always think what's the game show where it's like I can't remember what it is, but like
Yeah, we could probably put different ones. And then
yeah,
we hired that lady to do the voices for when you hit the target
yeah,
thing.
oh
And
yeah,
some coaches like putting it on a Bluetooth speaker.
yeah,
So they're playing in the bullpen, they play it out loud, and
yeah.
it's a lot of fun. Um, when you see videos online about improving command, I've seen them too. I've noticed that a lot of those videos are really about improving control.
Mhm.
So it seems to me a lot of people don't really understand the difference between command and control. And I was hoping to get your idea of what you think they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think command and control for me, I think everybody has a kind of a different interpretation of this. So I think this is a good conversation. For me, like let's say you got a guy who's pitching, he's in the strike zone, but he's kind of like wild within the strike zone. So like he's trying to go away, but maybe the ball's leaking back to the inner half, and like the hitter takes a strike, but no harm, no foul. Like that guy has pretty good control. Like, he's going to be able to fill up the strike zone, but also maybe when the game's on the line, he might make mistakes that cost him, right?
Mhm.
Command for me is a guy that, he knows where a good miss is. He knows where areas his ball performs best at. He knows, where to throw the baseball and he can get it there at a high probability.
Yeah,
Um,
he can go inside and claim the plate, all that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
we had we had a kid last year, Braxton Bragg, who I felt like had really good command. College pitching, it's hard to find that, to be honest with you. There's not a ton of guys with elite command, but he was a guy that I felt like had that. And
They
you
need a
know,
command tracker to train them.
yeah. And so it got to the point with him where like honestly, sometimes the strikeout pitch would be the fastball, like one ball off the plate, and he'd make a hitter make a decision. And or he could ram it in or he could go up, but yeah, that's when I think of command and control, that's kind of what I think of. He
Mhm.
might have a high strike percentage, but like is he really getting the ball to the spots he's trying to get him to?
Well, mechanically, let's say you're using my target and you're training a guy to have command, and you're trying to get him to hone in on a smaller and smaller spot. What kind of cues or what kind of things are you telling your pitchers to kind of help them?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, it just really depends on what we're doing that day. Like I like to be either over the rubber or over the plate. I know that a lot of people have said that, and that's pretty popular terminology. But for me, sometimes getting more external helps guys versus internal. So what I like to do is if there's things that the guy needs to work on as far as the delivery goes, if there's things he's doing that aren't allowing him to throw strikes, I want to train those every day in his pre-throw and his catch play and those things. Maybe some drill work on the mound. maybe short box, whatever that is. And then when he gets to the mound, I want to let his just kind of natural instincts take over. And I want him to be external. I want him to think about kind of the
Yeah.
catcher. I don't want my voice to be in the way of his bullpen, if that makes sense. And I know there's a lot of people like the cue guys every pitch and those things. And there's a lot of people, if you're pitch shaping and you're doing pitch design, like you're kind of having the cue guys. But as far as execution goes, I like to let those guys get in a rhythm, kind of stay out of their way. And I like to them be external and think about their routines and kind of managing their gaps between pitches. So
Gil Patterson of the A's had mentioned that too about he tells his pitchers that you're not pitching over the rubber, you're pitching over the plate. I want your
yeah.
focus there. And that kind of intention, which is a saying I always say, which is thoughts become things.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want negative thoughts in your mind in the mound, but you want those positive thoughts and that visualization of, I'm going to throw that pitch in that spot. And I think that mental focus is also something that kind of improves command. Have you found that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot of the command piece is intent and like knowing what you want to do with
Yeah.
the baseball. A lot of times guys get up there and they just throw, they're not visually connected. So maybe they're looking at their target, but they're not connected to what they're actually trying to do down there. There's a big difference between seeing your target and then being connected to the target. So
Yeah. Yeah.
seeing the target's like, oh, I just see it and I throw it there. Connected to the target is like, okay, I'm gonna run this thing through, the bottom of his glove or whatever it may be. But so there's a difference between being visually connected and just picking up your target per se. So it's the intent of what you're trying to do with the baseball. And then honestly, I got this from Dan Hefner. He says it all the time. The ball knows, the ball knows. Like if you throw that thing with confidence, like the ball knows it. And so you want to kind of let the ball know you're confident, you're in control, and that you're throwing with intent. And
Yeah.
so
Very important.
an intent could be two things. It could be the intent at which you throw it, but it can also be, your attention to detail and what you're trying to do with the baseball and having that clarity. And this is what I want to do with this pitch and
Yeah.
having
That's
confidence.
internal. Like when I was talking about those high school throwers, uh, when they first threw at the target, they're like, I would throw at the target. And it's not really a focus, not really, it's like, I can hit that thing any day. Then when they couldn't, then they focused and you saw a difference and it was a mental change, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, like, and this is one thing I found with the college pitcher. Maybe the pro ball guys are the same way, but some of them don't trust their stuff over the plate. So there's a little hurdle there where it's like, I don't know if my stuff is good in these spots. So if you can kind of show them like, hey, this is where you get swing and miss. Hey, you don't get squared up here. Like this is bad at exit velos. Like, hey, your bat average against is pretty low in these areas. And then you start to build that confidence. Then a lot of times you see the command piece and start to tick up a little bit. So I think giving those guys information, I think is huge as well. I think Tampa Bay, when you look at the big league level, I think they've done it as good as anybody. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I've had
obviously
my,
the Yankees and the Astros and all these guys they're doing it at a very high level as well. But yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, I had my friend Steve Merriman, the double A coach for the Rays on the other day, and he was talking about some things that they do as well. What kind of drills do you do for control and command? Like
like as far as like catch play or like pre-throw or all, I guess.
Dan DeQuette was describing with the Brewers that one pitcher coach would have guys the first five throws they have to throw down glove side. And until they got five of those in a row, then they could move to another area. And that if you couldn't throw down glove side in the zone,
Uh,
you hadn't synced all your mechanics up yet.
yeah. So a few things I think. So the one piece, like when we train pitchers, like you have the pre-throw segment, like where you haven't started throwing a baseball yet. And
Mm-hmm.
so in that pre-throw segment, you're trying to like mechanically, here's some things that we need to work on. Like maybe it's the landing stability is not very good, which is, not allowing them to, have much stability at foot strike. Okay. So maybe we're working on some of that pre-throw. All right. And then when we play catch, we talk about being visually connected. Your catch partner is giving you a target and you're telling them before the throw where you want to throw the baseball. So you're taking the butt baseball and you're pointing to your chest. That means you're going to throw to his chest. Hey, you're pointing to this shoulder. Hey, I'm throwing that shoulder. Hey, you're pointing to your face. Hey, I'm going to try to throw it through his face. And every throw, you're visually connected as a pitching coach. When I'm watching, if I'm not watching you tap the body parts before you throw the ball, I know you're not visually connected. You're just throwing it. And so
Uh-huh.
now we're able to kind of see, is there a high level focus here, or are we just kind of going through the motions, right? And then when
Yeah.
we get to the bullpens, we would do a thing called the funnel, which just more or less just helps you get lined up. So we'd have two balls on the arm side off the plate, and then two on the glove side off the plate. And we always start to the glove side. So we throw two balls to the glove side, and then we go two
Mm.
balls outside arm, two balls to the inside ball on the glove side, and two to the inside of the arm side, and then we go two middle. And so we're laning these throws, and there's 10 throws before we start. Every bullpen will be on the funnel. And that does nothing more than gets guys locked in. It gets them moving. There's a direction piece that you got to work towards the ball you're throwing to. So you're learning how to lane your body up the right way. And also it mentally locks you in. So after you get through those 10 pitches, like mentally, your brain is turned on, it's activated, stimulated, and like, your attention to being to detail and your intention of what you're wanting to do with the baseball is the awareness is pretty heightened. So, and I always thought there's a big difference between those pitches, arm side and glove side. I want guys to get the feel for those
Yeah.
different feels. And I always felt like if you could work outside, it's going to be a lot easier to work in. So we always start out and work in. Some
Mhm.
people start in and work out, and it's there's multiple ways to skin a cat, but that's the way we've always done it. So
Yeah, yeah. Gil Patterson was saying for the A's, they do that where they have a cone set up on the edge of the plate and then two balls off.
yeah,
And what he does is try to get guys to get a feel for the edge of the zone and just off the zone.
yeah,
So there are a lot of really cool techniques,
yeah.
you know. What role do you think repeatable mechanics play in command? Like, for example, I've always thought that if you were trying to hit a target, you were shooting and trying to hit a target from a rowboat that's moving around, that you would have a tough time. You'd have to be timing up the waves, and you could do it, but you have to think more about the waves, and then you're thinking of multiple things. And then if you were on solid ground, you only have to think about aiming. And so if your head is still, if your body is online, if your elbow and your eyes are pointing, everything's like solid, I thought you would have better chances.
Yeah, like as far as repeating goes, like Randy Sullivan, I think, has done some of the best work in this area. To be honest with you,
Oh,
if
it's
you look
awesome.
at him, Rob Gray, they've done a really good job. I've heard them both speak on it. I think they took a major league pitcher one time and they did his sequencing. His Kenneth tracks. They looked at he had like 7 different sequences. But he was a high level strike thrower and he could command the baseball. And so what they're talking about is like that kind of co-variability. So like your ability to be able to sync up at release. And so, they talk about, I've heard Randy talk about like if you write your name 10 times, you're not going to write it the same 10 times. So now thinking about moving down a slope,
Right.
throwing a
It's
ball,
within a range. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't think you could be sloppy. Every pitch there's got to be you got color inside the lines. But as far as repeating, I think that's kind of hard to do. Like I don't want to get too nerdy with you, but I think co-variability, like there's something about being able to self-organize and sync up at release. And the guys that can do that the best are generally your better strike throwers. But
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely that if you can adjust for the variation. But I was thinking that if you didn't have as much variation, you wouldn't have to deal with that
there you
to
go. There,
begin.
yeah, yes. And like that's it,
That's
like your head can't be going here to this way, that way, and and sync up. Like, yeah, absolutely. If you can definitely, kind of close the gaps on the movement, I think, and have something that if you're, a pretty simple mover and you do things that you can kind of repeat, I think, you have a better shot. But, the more you got going on, it's like a hitter with a big load and a big, you know, thing, those guys are gonna have a hard time getting to contact consistently.
yeah.
But
Well, I remember in high school, uh, my son, that every time they went to a field, there's a big divot. It was horrible, and so he'd have to figure out. He'd have to, the his foot wouldn't land in the same spot every time, and it's hard to have command if you're kind of wobbling everywhere. So he developed a style where he'd rock back and keep his foot planted so that he
Yeah.
didn't have to deal with that variation.
Yep.
So, in other words, if you stop the variation from happening, you don't have to deal with it when you're throwing. So you don't have to deal with this, uh,
Yeah.
small variations.
You're starting to see a lot more of that being taught. I mean, a lot. I mean, it's not uncommon now to watch a big league game and guys only throw from the stretch starters, reliever. Like it doesn't matter. It used to be just
Yeah,
relievers. Now you're seeing starters do it. Guys with longer levers, like the pelvis is a little bit more neutral. Some guys are teaching, kind of they're starting sideways and just a small side step that's to stay neutral and yeah. I mean, you're seeing a lot different styles nowadays, but it's kind of cool too. Like you're starting to see some of the stuff take up, and the deliveries are actually not, it's not like a haymaker head fly. Like guys are actually doing it at a lower intent, which has been pretty cool to see as well.
yeah. What kind of pitchers do you typically look for? Like, say there are high school guys or even JUCO guys that want to pitch for you. What kind of qualities are you looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for outlier kind of a little bit. I want guys that are unique and different. I don't want a bunch of the guys that look the same. So, I want maybe a lower slot lefty with a sweep slider, maybe, or a higher slot lefty with ride on his fastball and carry. You're looking for just kind of some outlier, maybe a guy with good feel for slider, a swing and a slider. You're trying to put together a staff. So,
Mhm.
ideally your starters, they'd be able to sink the ball and they'd be efficient and, they'd be able to, give you 6, 7 innings on 80 to 100 pitches. And
Mhm.
then generally your backing guys, you want them to have swing and miss. So some of those characteristics might be ride, getting above the barrel, might be power breaking balls, and those things. But yeah, in the recruiting, the main thing I look for is you kind of want to look for arm actions. Like, what kind of arm action is this? Is it online? Is it offline? Is it look like it works? Is it two piece? And then after that, I want to see, like, is it easy? Like, I don't want guys that are up there that are trying to light up the radar gun. And, I want the guy that's nice and easy. Like the guy that's easy and the ball jumps out, those guys usually make pretty good jumps and you're seeing pretty good things with those. We had a kid land a knack at ETSU, and he was that kid. He was 88, 89 in JUCO, but it was very easy. Like it looked like he was falling asleep when he pitched, and he made big jumps as he learned to kind of pick up that tempo just a little bit. And so,
Yes.
yeah,
See, well, you remember those Velomaniac jokes I was doing?
yeah,
I know if you saw them, and one of them was that if you're uh, if you're losing your hat after each pitch, you might be
yeah,
a Velomaniac.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that. You're seeing a lot of that out there, and I'll get a video of a kid like, "Hey, here's my video. I'm throwing this hard," but the kid's all over the place, ball all over the place. Like, look, I mean, we're at the college level. Like, you're going to get some of the best hitters out in the country. Like, you're going to need to be able
Yeah.
to do a lot more than just throw 94. And so, yeah,
Yeah. So I'm glad to say that because I think too often these guys are chasing only throwing harder, and it might not be the thing that lets them succeed in college because they need more than that, and they should put some extra effort on some of the other things that are required.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think if we could all meet in the middle somewhere, right? Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
think the
a little of
middle,
each, right?
yeah, the middle is the sweet spot. Like, this kid, like, okay, try to take up your stuff a little bit, and this guy, it's like, hey, try to take your stuff and let's put it in a good spot. And so I think the middle is kind of the honey hole, but I think you're starting to see people kind of go to the extremes and honestly, the game's cycling them back right now. I really do feel that way. You're seeing less of it than I did 2 years ago, and so the game's kind of reining it in a little bit, which I think has been good.
Yeah, because it's also for sustainability because you can't as a pitching coach, you can't pitch a game with all relievers. You're going to be,
Yeah,
after a couple of games, you're going to be out of pitchers.
yeah.
Uh, so I have a list of things that I wrote that I thought were the top qualities you need to be a pitcher. And I
Okay.
want to get your opinion. I'm going to show you on the screen of what you
Uh,
thought were your top four.
my top
And now,
four.
Yeah. Now, all of them are important, but just to get an idea what you think is important. I've been doing it at every guest,
Okay.
and at some point in the future, I'm going to kind of reveal what was the top four and what the ratings
Okay.
were.
Do I have to put them in order or just give you my top four?
No, just put your top four.
Okay.
So you're going to see a list on the screen,
Okay.
and you'll pick the top four qualities for a pitcher. So the
Ooh,
character, yeah, character, command, changing speeds, movement, max velocity, sequencing, reading batters, and mental toughness. What are your top four?
ooh, this is a tough one.
Yeah, they're
I,
all needed, right?
I think, I mean, this is all, yeah, they're all needed. I'd take all these, but if I'm going top four for me, I'm going to go. I can tell you my top two right off the bat. It's very easy. Mental toughness and character, I think, are my top two.
Yeah.
I think you have to have those two. Outside of that, give me honestly, you're not gonna like this, but I would take command with velo, max velo. I would take both. And I know that's like kind of against the thing, but I would take, yeah, those are my top four. I think change speeds is really good. But if you had max velo and you could command it, I think you would be pretty good.
Oh
Honestly, if you
yeah.
could change speeds with movement, you could do change speeds with movement. Like if you could do that,
Yeah.
you'd be really good. So
Yeah. Any
yeah,
of these you could be like a I think Dan DeQuette put it, it's like any of those you could be a chef, he said, and you can mix any of those things
like
and you'd have a great pitch.
Hendricks would be commanding changing speeds. Like he would be, he'd be mentally tough and he'd have good character. Like those would be his four, but then
Well, I
those
think it
guys,
fits in. Yeah, I think it fits in what you said earlier. Is that you have different pitchers. You have different pitchers you need to fill in your staff, and from those kind of eight things, you could pick different qualities and find different pitchers that would be on your staff.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know. And I made that list too because I think too often people are focusing on max velocity when there are a lot of other things that go into the mix. And you might not be the hardest thrower, uh, but you can still succeed. Like
Yeah.
Sean throws, he'll sit 90, 92.
Yeah.
Had his first major league spring training start. Well, how did that happen? According to places online, that shouldn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's because he had other qualities from that list.
Yeah.
And I think
He's got good character. He's got good mental toughness. Like he can command. He's savvy too. Like Sean, like he can read hitters. Like he's
yeah,
perfected movement profiles. Like he knows how to shape pitches. Like he knows how to command. Like, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to get hitters out. I think, everybody has their own style and those things, but there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but you got to find your niche. And once you find that, if you don't throw the hardest, yes, you have to command it. You have to have the art of pitching down. If you have velo, great. You still have to locate pitches. Like, the game will tell you like, hey, that's not going to be good enough. So yeah, I
yeah.
think
I
you
think
have
if
to
you,
find your niche.
yeah, you have to find out who you are. I
Mhm.
think if you have command and don't have velo, well, you can add on more velo. If you
Yeah.
have velo, no command, then you got to add on more. So like you got to rise all those levels up.
Yep.
With your pitchers, I'm sure every one of your pitchers you recruited for a reason. You believe in them. You put
Mm-hmm.
them on the mound because that's you know who they are, and you want them to be the guy that you chose. You don't want them to be like the other guy. You want them to be like you know
Yeah, and that's the cool thing is all the different pitchers on staff like different pieces of the puzzle, and they all need to be different. If
yeah.
they all try to blend in and look alike, and it's not good recipe in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember at DBU, they would bring in, have a starter and he's throwing 90 to 95 and doing all well for the game. They bring in for a reliever, a guy, I remember it's Travis Stone. I thought he
Yeah,
was great. Now, he was throwing slower than those guys, but because he was throwing slower, the batters had a hard time adjusting to him. So that difference made him strong. Like he was different from the other players. That made him strong.
so you're telling me Stone was below the pitching speed or the hitter speed, the hitting speed?
Well, the
He
other joke too is that Steve Merriman says that I asked, "Do you think you need a minimum velocity to pitch, like a minimum command, minimum velocity?" He said, "Well, they always say you have to either be below bat speed or above bat speed."
Yeah, so Stone was below bat speed. Yeah, it's funny because we worked together last year, and so I'm gonna give him a hard time about that. Yeah, he was a good. He was underneath. He had big
Yeah,
sink.
I liked his stuff. Yeah,
He had the sweep slider before that was real popular. He was even telling me he's like, man, I wish the sweep slider were the thing. I would have dominated that. So
yeah, yeah. No, he was great. I still talk to him now and then. He's a
yeah,
cool guy.
so Travis is awesome.
Well, Micah, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I think every time I do a show, I learn something. So thank you.
Yeah, Wayne, thanks for your time and thanks for what you're doing for the pitching community. And I know you have a big passion and you're definitely pushing the game forward. And we appreciate all the time and effort you put into doing that.
Oh, thank you. Same with you. And congratulations again on Coach of the Year. That's a big honor.
I appreciate you, Wayne. Thank you.
Bye.